so much for staying with Morning Live. Now, over the past 2 weeks, South Africa has made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Violence directed at foreign nationals in several areas has left a trail of destruction and several people dead. And some of the looting coincided with the World Economic Forum for Africa event that took place in Cape Town last week. Now, International Relations Department last week denied reports that 3 heads of state cancelled their visits due to attacks on African migrants. Now, the department also confirmed that the South African High Commission in Abuja and Consulate in Lagos, Nigeria, shut their doors on Wednesday after protesters targeted those premises. DIRCO Minister Naledi Pandor joins us now from our Pretoria studios to discuss these developments. Minister, good morning and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to the viewers of SABC.
Minister, firstly, there have been several developments and a lot has been interpreted differently by different people. What is government's interpretation of how best to describe what is currently happening in the country and how we should handle it as a nation?
Well, Sakina, I think several of the leaders of our country, including President Ramaphosa, have expressed their dismay and concern at the deplorable violence that we have seen against foreign nationals as well as South Africans. No country can regard what has happened as acceptable, and we call on the people of South Africa that we should stop this violence and should reflect who we are as a country. A people who should love peace, who respect humanity, and who believe in the rights of all. So I think these values need to be promoted very strongly. We need to call on all our people to really end this violence. But we do assert that there is a strong element of criminality here. The levels of destruction, the theft that constantly accompanies all of these incidents suggest that there's a planned set of criminal actions. And thus we must support our police to act against these people. Visitors, residents who are non-citizens are welcome to South Africa and must be treated with respect and dignity. And this is the position of government.
Minister, well, unfortunately, and to our shame, this is not the first time that we have seen these types of incidents. And the question is then whether government actually knows how to respond to this and not react, as seems to be the case right now, as was the case when we saw these sorts of flare-ups previously since 2008. Does government know what to do here? Has government actually done anything to address the root causes of these conflicts since they first reared?
Sakina, I think what's necessary is that we need to probe far more deeply what the underlying reasons for this conflict are. Why are people reacting in this way? There have been attempts to reach out. I'm meeting all ambassadors today who are represented in South Africa, whose countries are represented here. And I would like to propose to them that together we initiate a form of outreach to communities, both South African as well as non-South Africans, and begin to become bridge builders. Perhaps we haven't done enough of that, but our government has been welcoming of all who wish to come and stay in our country. Of concern have been accusations by some community members in South Africa that they believe some foreign nationals are involved in crime and so on. Nothing can justify the violence that we've seen, and that must be rejected in all its guises. But I do think the plethora of issues that keep being referred to do require attention, and our security forces must assist us in addressing all crime Persons who are involved in crime must be arrested by the police, must be tried, should be in prison. But our community, our citizens, must desist from violence.
And I think, Minister, most people would totally agree with you. But the question then is, why haven't the law enforcement authorities actually done what they're supposed to do, exactly how you outlined? Why hasn't it happened? Why haven't we seen solutions to these problems? Because it would seem as though the situation is exacerbated every time there's a new flare-up.
Well, as I say, what we must look into is what are the reasons for the flare-up. Because it's very difficult when a light is placed on a tinderbox to react proactively. What we've got to do is look at, are enough steps being taken to build social cohesion? Are we ensuring that we prevent crime? Are we ensuring that we build unity among communities, that people develop an understanding of each other and are able to live together peacefully? There are many, many articles being written, but not enough is being said about the practical efforts. Are we talking to people, both South African as well as non-nationals, about their experience in our country, about how we draw them together so that we develop a way of living together in peace? And I must say, in the main, the broader South African population is a welcoming population, is one that has opened up communities to many people from other parts, both of Africa and the rest of the world. So these incidents are something we must examine very, very closely and ensure that we eradicate from our society. I am going to take the time to try to understand the issue from broad perspectives much more clearly than I do now. But I think I conclude by saying the violence is intolerable and cannot be countenanced.
Minister, you said earlier that you will be meeting with ambassadors and other diplomats in the country. It was reported that President Buhari of Nigeria is coming to South Africa to meet with the government. Is there any truth to that? And is there any specific reason why he will be coming, or is it part of the meeting that you alluded to?
As you would know, President Ramaphosa paid a visit to Nigeria in 2018. And at that time had invited President Buhari to pay a state visit to South Africa. This invitation was repeated following the elections formally by President Ramaphosa. And in response, President Buhari has confirmed that he will pay a state visit to South Africa and will be here on the 3rd of October.
Now, Minister, there have also been so many stories, especially on social media, and, some of them are all about scaremongering, others of fake news, and there's this frenzy that has been sparked. And what is government doing to allay some of the fears and, try and stop some of these incidents of sharing of disinformation continuing?
Well, Sakina, in the last few days, I've seen how the social media can be of assistance, but also be a real weapon of encouraging disunity and violence. Have been many posts on social media that are totally false and untrue. And we need to encourage every person who posts fake news to stop doing so, particularly news that is meant to inflame passions, to cause more violence. I'm absolutely disgusted at some of the postings which have been totally dishonest and untrue. Our people must learn to check news, to really assess whether the video they're looking at or the recording they're listening to is something that is factual and to be believed. You will recall how genocide in Rwanda was to a great degree stimulated via the media, through statements made by leaders and others. So we have to desist and watch our own language and what is communicated, and ensure that what we say helps to build a basis for calm and the absence of violence.
Now, Minister, as DIRCO, do you have any further information regarding South African businesses that came under attack in countries like Zambia and Nigeria last week? We saw some statements being released by those companies, but is there any further update as far as you are aware from the department side?
Well, we did get reports of stores being attacked in Zambia as well as Nigeria. I have had engagement with my colleague in Nigeria, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he has assured me that the Nigerian authorities will ensure that businesses are protected. And thus far, I've not had any new reports of hostility toward our businesses. I've seen video commentary and so on by various individuals. But in terms of the authority, they indicate they're taking all steps to ensure businesses can function effectively. Similarly, with Zambia, President Lungu has been very clear that he will not tolerate disorder and abuse. And we are hopeful that we can open our embassies this week. All appears to be calm. I'm hoping I'll get reports later this morning, and if there's any change, I shall indicate so.
And we're running out of time, Minister, but I need to ask you about the resignation of the former ambassador to the Netherlands, Bruce Kolwane. Now, you said in Parliament last week that it was in the public interest to transfer Ambassador Khurana back to head office in Pretoria. Does that mean that he will still be in the employ of government had he not resigned?
He would have been in the employ of government because he was a permanent staff member within the public service. However, he decided that he prefers to resign, and so the matter is now closed.
It certainly is, but it still raises the question of, if he wasn't fit to hold office as an ambassador, why would government still keep him in his employ? What does that say about the nature of the transgression that he is said to have perpetrated?
Well, we can't, in terms of the law, just summarily dismiss a person. You'd have to follow particular processes. Should he have returned when I had indicated he should, he would have returned into the public service. As to what would have followed then, I don't have to venture into it since he has resigned.
And just finally, Minister, with everything that's going on, we had WEF last week and still dealing, of course, with the flare-ups of violence as we speak right now, you and I. What's on your agenda going forward this week, and what are some of the most important touch points that you have to deal with?
Well, there are a number of activities underway. Firstly, today we are hosting the Foreign Minister of Nicaragua, who's visiting our country. And later this week, I will be heading to Botswana, where I am part of a panel of ministers that is assisting in identifying a candidate for the ACP Secretary General position. Several candidates from SADC have indicated interest, and we as a number of ministers have been assigned to undertake this task. So we'll be working hard at that. And of course, I'll be meeting all the ambassadors today, and we will be exploring ideas on how we jointly address these rather challenging matters.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. That was Naledi Pandor, the Minister of the Department of International Affairs and Cooperation, speaking to us from our Pretoria studios, discussing some recent developments in the country. With that, it's time